So TaMisha, unfortunately, is having a little bit of audio trouble today, sadly. So we're gonna just get started here while we're waiting for her. But I am thrilled to be here today, and I'll let Emily. Are we ready to start? Should I wait a couple of minutes? Or are we good?
I think we're good to go. So let's do it. I just want to say hello, everybody. Also, welcome to what is my favorite session of our whole conference. And I'm not biased at all, except maybe just a tiny bit. But every year, NISTS does something called the Action-Focused Plenary Workshop. And if you haven't attended with us before, you don't maybe have the same frame of reference as others. But if we were meeting in person, we'd all be in a giant ballroom, sitting together at tables with big pads of paper and sticky notes and markers and colors in front of us, really digging into content and working and making a plan right there live. So we are trying to do this virtually. So it's going to feel a little bit different, but we're going to utilize a little bit of talking time, a little bit of breakout small group time, and rely on y'all to sort of have some paper in front of you to do some note taking and following along as we talk about advocacy training skills. Now, we know that you've got people on your campus who you want to bring into the transfer success world. And so that's what this session is all about. And I'm excited, so excited that our friends Heather and TaMisha agreed to do this for us. They've got a big old wonderful workshop planned. So hang with us. We're going to hopefully have TaMisha. Oh, I see her just popped back in. So we're going to see if I can get her right to the right spot in just one second. But I'm so excited, and we're gonna just go and have a little talking time to start and get to the workshop in a few minutes. So everyone hang in, buckle up, and get ready. We're excited to be here. So take it away, Heather.
Oh my goodness, thank you, Emily. I really appreciate that. You know how thrilled I am to be here and how inspired I am by watching the chat, and everybody seems so excited and jazzed and encouraged. And that is such a great sign that you are getting a lot out of this week. So my name is Heather Adams. I am a senior program manager at the Aspen Institute, the College Excellence program there, and I oversee transfer initiatives. I was, though, the former director of the UCLA Transfer Student Center. So a lot of this work was informed by the practice there. So TaMisha and I have really worked for years together at UCLA to develop a transfer advocate training to help educate and develop more transfer awareness and receptivity across the campus. As the transfer people on campus, and by the way, at UCLA, we were incredibly fortunate. We had a transfer squad, and we had a champion in Alfred Herrera and the Center for Community College Partnership as our model. So we were fortunate, but even so, it is easy to feel alone in this work. And other than this conference, there's not a whole lot of professional development for folks, particularly folks not in the transfer sphere, right? So through NIST and through Transfer Nation, which is a forum for transfer educators that we'll talk about in a bit, we have been researching other programs across the country that have successfully developed tools and trainings to promote environments that are more informed and welcoming and inclusive of transfer students and the rich experience they bring to our campuses. So look, you are all doing this work, and you're doing it so well. And what we're interested in is continuing this learning and working together today and after today to collectively build effective toolkits and trainings to support practitioners nationally. A national transfer advocate toolkit, right? Come on, are you with me? I want to see it in the chat. So thank you for being here today and joining this movement and this call to action to empower change agents across your campuses and environments. A real quick agenda. We're going to cover a lot today, but here's the deal. This is just the start. So we accidentally created a 5-day retreat, a 3-day work session at the very least. So today is the tip of the iceberg. We are going to touch on some things. We are going to cover the components that we found in the research on what makes a successful transfer advocate training. We're going to talk about some transfer advocacy frameworks and competency measurements with Emily and Mark Allen from NIST. And we're going to do a little tiny mini speed through of a training. And then we're going to get to the work where you get to build your own advocacy training together as groups and learn from each other. But as I said, we are going to, oops, here we go. I need to also flip the slides, I suppose that would help. So that's our agenda. We are going to continue this conversation, and we're even going to continue this conversation tonight. So if you're free, there's a QR code there you can scan. We're going to have a little happy hour, just on NIST, share takeaways, and learn from each other so we can keep the conversation going. So is TaMisha back by any chance? I just want to give her an opportunity to jump in.
Yeah, I think I'm here, and I think we're working.
Do you want to switch so you can be radio control?
Oh, sure. I can switch over to share slide. Hello, everybody. Sorry, just at that moment when you're about to present and all of your audio goes out. Lovely start to the day, but we are back and we are ready to go. So just give me a moment and I will share our slides as we get talking. So I'm TaMisha, by the way. I have had the pleasure working with Heather for so long, and it's always been a pleasure. What we're going to do is really talk about the why we're here. And I think this has been apparent throughout the whole conference. The reason that we're all here and the reason that we do this work is our students. So whatever we're doing, whatever we're building should revolve around them and what their needs and their wants are. Like I think it was said earlier in the week that the students are our why. And so we really wanted to start this off by hearing from some of our students. We asked them a lot of questions and they responded with so many great nuggets of information and pieces for us to keep in mind. And so we wanted to share one of those quotes with you here now. Hopefully this will come through in my audio as I play it, but or not. But when we asked our students like what they envision, they were like, you know, this perfect campus climate is one that's inclusive, one that doesn't make me feel like I'm an outsider, where I'm appreciated by the professors, where I feel understood, where I feel seen, and that as a first-year transfer, and I love to see clubs where they're included in those. For example, I joined a club because I felt welcomed on how they actively knew how to outreach to transfer students to be members and didn't require a certain number of years of experience to be on exec board. And I always appreciated seeing staff members and administrators who, you know, kept that in mind. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind as we're going through the day and as we're thinking about the components that we're building. So we wanted to really share that with you all. Quickly going through our learning outcomes for the day, like Heather said, there's a lot. We've got a lot to cover, and this, is probably a 3-day work retreat in the future at some point, but you're gonna learn about the transfer advocacy framework from Emily and Mark. You're gonna understand the training tools that we have. We're gonna give you some action steps that you can kind of take as you're moving through and give you some tools to build your own framework, but also give you resources in us and other people that can help you along the way. Hopefully you'll develop some knowledge, even if it's just in one of those small areas. And of course, it's important for us to always celebrate our small wins. No matter how we're doing or where we're going, if we're even turning the dial slightly, celebrate that, because that's moving us forward and getting to that ideal campus culture that our students want. So just to give you some background, we did kind of accidentally create a lot of things. So we have a lot of resources for you. There's a tiny URL here that is a toolkit that includes some worksheets that'll help you go through the sessions today if you are a person who likes to work as you go. We have some homework for you if that's what you need to take back to your team and you want to work through that with your staff to see what your needs are. Some self-reflection activities to keep you going, and obviously some interactive pieces with some Jamboards that we'll share after the session, and a kudos board at the end so we can kind of share tips and celebrate a little bit as well. There's also a lot of resources in this thing. So we'll post this link in the chat so you can have access. Use it as you see fit as you're going through the session. And if you have questions, let us know at the end. We'll continue to add to it as we continue this work.
Thank you so much, TaMisha, for breaking it down for us and giving us the inside scoop on where to find the resources. We're going to turn it over to Emily and Mark Allen from NIST, because they are going to lay out some competency measurements and a framework for this advocacy work. So take it away, Emily and Mark.
Yes, thanks so much. We appreciate you. I think probably everybody has heard from me about 1 million times now. So you're like, Emily, why are you talking so much at this conference? But this one's my favorite because I love transfer advocacy, and Mark Allen and I have been working together on a project for a little over a year that we are super excited to share with you. So I'm Emily, I'm Assistant Director at NISTS.
Hi, I'm Mark Allen Poisel. I'm an advisory board member with NISTS. I've been with the organization since the beginning, and I'm passionate about what we can do to help our students be successful. So what we wanted to do is just begin to share with you what Emily and I have been working on for about the past year. We realized that transfer advocacy is such an important component of the work that we do. And we also realized that we needed to help empower other professionals to feel as though they could advocate on their campuses. Advocacy doesn't mean you have to have a certain title or a certain position or a certain level. It means that you have a desire and a great passion to help transfer students be successful. Keep going, Emily. So what we wanted you to talk about briefly and what the advocacy toolkit we've created is based upon essentially these two questions. What is it? What does it look like? And what knowledge, skills, and attitudes do professionals need to advocate? A lot of times we have workshops and presentations and people say, well, I don't have that skill or I didn't know how to do that. And so we wanted to create a professional development program that's easy, that really shows people no matter what level, what position, you can be a transfer advocate. So based upon that, next slide, Emily, we wanted to give you a sense of what is transfer advocacy. And the first and foremost, it's doing the right thing for the transfer students. It's institutional and individual efforts that can impact transfer student success. It's got to be empathetic and practical in its application. We've got to listen to our students. We have to empathize for the challenges and the barriers that they are experiencing. And we've got to put it in action and make it practical. We know it's all about the relationships and it's got to be collegial. We are not advocates by ourselves, but advocates as part of a team. And we know that the work that we have to do, the stories that we're going to tell is really based upon the data and what we know about our students at our institutions. Next, please. So what does it look like? What does transfer advocacy look like? Well, it comes in many forms. It's observing and listening. As a transfer professional, as a faculty member, as somebody on your campuses, watch and listen and observe your students. Share and have them share with you about their experiences. Empathize with the challenges they may be facing. Let's face it, we work in some amazing institutions, but we sure do know how to create bureaucratic policies and procedures and guidelines that in some cases just don't make sense. It's important to know your culture and your institution. That's absolutely critical. You've got to do it with passion, but you have to do it within your culture and the politics of the institution. It requires persistence with patience. I know being a transfer advocate and creating a transfer center, I had to be constantly reminding people of thinking about transfers and how to make it better, but I knew I wasn't going to get everything overnight. It was passion. The other thing is we have to advocate across the spectrum to all our colleagues. We have to advocate for the people that we work with and we supervise. And we've got to advocate to our bosses and our senior leaders. We're always the ones that has to talk about transfer and how to make it better for our students. Next. Go. And we put the advocacy toolkit together and our frameworks together based upon three main components. First of all, you have to know the data. Data is qualitative and it's quantitative. Know your student stories, know the facts, know the statistics. That is really critical. The next component of that is the relationships. We know that you've got to have relationships with others on campus. You've got to find your people, find those that really care about transfer students and work together to have an impact on your institution. It's not just the admissions department or just advising. It needs to be a campus-wide effort. And that might mean taking friends to lunch to build that relationship and that advocacy. And then the final part is really the communication piece, telling the story. And we all have to be storytellers. We have to use our students' stories. We have to get our students to be storytellers because we know that the impact comes from those impassioned stories from our students where it makes people feel as if we need to help them. We remember things when it changes the way that we feel. And the intersection of those three things is advocacy and action. And our whole idea is based upon taking action. We need to make sure what we do works for our students. Next. So we created this basic model and we want you to think about it from the perspective that it is a training module. These are key components of it. But the best part is it doesn't matter where you come in. You could be a beginner, you could be an advanced. We've created training that is interchangeable. You can think of it kind of like a bingo card. You can do training in lots of different areas. You can start in certain places. based upon your role, your experience, and what you want to learn. We've tied it to the idea of a beginner, intermediate, and advanced because we know that at the introductory level, we want you to request and really partner. We know that it's going to take some educating and some peeling on campus. And then finally, we know that that advanced advocacy level really is convening people together, is making a change, is transforming things on your campus. And so Emily's going to talk more about this in detail, but this is kind of the basic of our framework and how we hope to educate others about transfer advocacy.
Yeah, thank you, Mark Allen. And so this is a lot to look at. We totally acknowledge that. So we're going to unpack it just a little bit to get everybody on the same page and make sure we're understanding the same reasons behind why it was formulated the way it was. And we know this is brand new to you, so don't worry. This is just a quick overview, and all this will be available to you eventually on the NISTS website. So this is the framework, and let's kind of just break it down a little bit. So what we want you to know is that we founded this and sort of created it with 3 core beliefs in mind. So to reiterate what has already been said, anyone can be a transfer advocate regardless of their role, standing, or years of experience. You do not have to have been working with transfer students for 50 years to be an advocate. You can do it right out of the gate. And it doesn't matter if you're in the admissions office, the financial aid office, if you're a faculty, if you're an administrator, if you're a researcher, anybody can do this. Next is transfer advocacy can take many forms and may be needed at any moment to improve the policies, processes, programs, and structures that impact transfer student success. If you were able to sit in on our hot seat yesterday, we talked a lot about advocacy, and even Alfred Herrera, one of our favorite transfer champions, said, you have to be the one in the room who's speaking up. And so that's that any moment thing. You have to be ready to say, and what about transfer students, and make sure that it is on people's radars. And third, transfer students need transfer advocates working at every level to enhance the transfer student experience and create a transfer inclusive campus culture. If just 1 or 2 of us are doing it, it's not enough, and it's not going to spread at the grassroots level and take catch and go like fire everywhere throughout the campus and ignite everyone's passion if only one person's doing it. They need advocates everywhere, all over campus. So again, what is it and who is it for? This framework, why do we keep calling it that? The transfer advocacy framework is designed to help professionals at any point in their career build the knowledge, skills, and attitudes they need to become better transfer advocates. I think we mentioned before, we started thinking about this and doing some Googling, and my friend Google could not come up with anything when I was like, how do I be an advocate? It was stumped. I found like some HBR articles, so certainly nothing that was specific to transfer. So we wanted to come up with practical guidance and application to help people who are out there, and Google's failing them too. We're about to make it to the top of the Google list, I'm pretty sure. I'm hopeful anyway, so that anybody can begin to develop their knowledge in this area. But the framework itself, we're going to see it identifies progressively complex and intertwined transfer advocacy topics in those 3 key areas: data and analysis, relationships and collaboration, and communication and culture. And so what we mean by progressively complex, exactly what we said: beginner, intermediate, advanced. So a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. And then intertwined is when we start digging into the skills, you'll see that you can't do one without probably also doing something from one of the other buckets. So we're going to look at that in a little bit too. So here they are, those 3 key topic areas in the framework. So here are the 3 skill levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced. And again, just want to reiterate that this doesn't mean that you're a beginner in the field of transfer or that you're a beginner in the field of higher education. You're a beginner in terms of really consciously thinking about your transfer advocacy skills and learning and approaching those things. So one of the things we keep talking about a lot is that transfer advocacy is action. So we put these verbs at the top of the framework for ourselves to just always remind ourselves that you've got to be doing something if you're a transfer advocate. So you might be requesting data from your IR office. You could be partnering with your faculty colleagues to be sure that there's a transfer student mentor in every academic unit. There are the things, the actions, behaviors you're doing at every level of the framework. So what we want to see here, I think I animated wrong, my bad. So I want to point out a few things. Let's see if I can remember what I was going to say. Oh, the subtopic areas, that's what we're talking about. So in the data and analysis section, 3 key areas. Now these are broad topics and there are specific skills behind them. We don't have time today to get into those too much, but when we talk about a beginner in data and analysis, it's that gathering relevant data. It's analyzing results, utilizing results. We talk about relationships and collaboration, identifying partnerships, establishing collaborations, sustaining those relationships. And then for the culture and communication, understanding transfer cultures, educating in storytelling, and championing change. So again, when we get this online, it's going to help you answer questions. You're going to click on a little box and be like, well, how do I identify those partners? Is there like a transfer success team here, or do I need to create one? We want to put information out there that helps you do the stuff, the actions in each of these areas. So some of the things might be just topics about quant versus qual, disaggregation, uncovering barriers. Could be transfer success teams, or identifying common goals, celebrating successes. These are some of those specific topics underneath each broad umbrella. Could be conducting a campus landscape scan, or sharing transfer narratives, not just stories, but really pulling all of the big implications out of those stories, and creating a transfer strategic plan. Those are just some of the little topics that might be sprinkled throughout the transfer framework. We've got a lot of supporting materials. We're not going to get into them today. You'll find them online in a couple, maybe a few months from now. It'll be on our website. But here we go. This is the framework. And so why in the world are we talking about it today? Because we want to be sure you're situating this idea of, I'm going out to my campus to train other transfer advocates, but you're an advocate too. And so let's get realistic about the skills you're bringing to that, and the skills that you want your advocates to develop as well. So with that, we're going to do a little bit of an activity. And so I'm going to switch my screen sharing back over to TaMisha and Heather. But so you know, we're going to be doing some annotating if you want to start finding the view option in your Zoom window. So I'm going to stop my share now. You guys ready? Okay.
Thank you so much, Emily. So as we're talking today, I'm so glad you gave that framework, because now we're going to be able to kind of trip through and get to the group work part, because you just outlined so well the elements to and components to a training. So we'll go through our slides and it'll be a little breakneck speed, but you're going to see that they basically track right along this transfer advocacy framework.
So to start us off, we did have a little bit of an activity. We're gonna maybe do this really quickly if you want to on your screen, to just maybe annotate where you are or where you feel you are for yourself. So if you go into the top right corner, it should say Zoom options on your Zoom, and there should be a link for annotate. So you can just mark with the X, circle, star, whatever. We're just gonna do the first one. But this would be a great tool to maybe, as you're building out the framework for you or your staff, to maybe check and see where everybody is coming into the conversation. And since we're all virtual, annotate is a great way to do that. Love it. Look at all of this. Wow.
This is amazing. And yeah, I love what TaMisha just said. Like, this is all going to be for you to take back to your teams and work together as a team. So you're getting lots of eyes on it. This is great.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. We're going to move on. I have to like figure out where my things are. Quickly.
I'm going to talk a little bit while we're figuring that out. Keep reflecting on this as you go. I think we'll kind of skip through this reflection activity, but it's going to be super helpful as you start to build your tools. And I want to kind of get to where we are with our little mini training, I think. TaMisha, is that good for you? Okay, perfect. So if you want to skip ahead. So our goal today was to travel through sort of a mini transfer training with you and explore some of the components of a solid training with examples. Now, I don't think we have to belabor it because we just got really great examples, but we found from the projects that we were looking at that they broke into sort of three main goals. Obviously, you also need to set a tone for a training, which I think is our next slide. Hopefully, this is stuff that you're pretty aware of, like setting kind of learning outcomes and what to do, how community agreements and what does it mean to be an advocate. So you want to give some framework, of course. But But then what we found for our transfer advocacy toolkit when we were gathering all of this information is that the successful trainings really fell into 3 very broad component areas. We had great examples from University of Minnesota, University of North Carolina, Wilmington, UCLA, of course, App State, UC San Diego, and so many more. But everything kind of fell into these 3 categories of understanding and educating on transfer, transforming and shifting culture on transfer, and empowering transfer success. Now, we also noticed that a lot of the time was spent in understanding and educating transfer. So our goal today is really getting to these shifting culture and the action and empowering transfer success. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail here. In understanding and educating, it fell into, there were 3 main categories that we were already talked about. Data, obviously, you have to have the number, know the data, know the percentages, know the numbers. And if you don't know them, find out who does on your campus. The experience of transfer students that we're going to go into in a little bit more detail, and resources. So these are some examples of how some other schools have presented their data. So make sure that you have data on transfer students. And if you don't, find out who does and who to talk to. This is sort of where you need to start. Data is where we start to understand where transfers are, how many transfers there are, and it helps folks in a training get perspective and context that transfers are everywhere. Sometimes you might want to get some national data depending on who you're making the case to. So who is your audience? What is going to be most effective for that particular audience? So pulling in some national data on the importance and impact of community college transfer students in the nation might be vital.
Next, we really just wanted to focus on the experiences of our students and get that kind of qualitative data, which is going to be really unique from campus to campus. Again, we had talked to our students and we felt like they were the best to obviously share information about their experience, and had provided some quotes. I've changed my audio settings, so I'll see if this one plays, or not. But really looking at what is the one thing faculty and staff administration can do to make me feel welcome is empowered and making me feel reassured that I did it, that I felt like my transfer process was rushed and that I just needed that reassurance that I really believed that I was meant to be here. And I think as we're creating these trainings, that's what we're trying to do. Create that sense of belonging for students and make sure that they're there. So there are plenty of ways to get that. Surveying students as they've done, doing some research about theoretical frameworks to build your surveys in, talking to students, getting their stories, doing a survey. What we did is having a quote wall or something for them to just fill in and talk about their experiences and how things were going, and pulling that information into our training so that other partners, other students, and other administrators could be aware of those things as well. Since our audio is off. And we also wanted to kind of open that up for opportunities to really talk about the student experience. As that one listed, they really just want people to be empowering agents for them. But we know that there is a lot of misconceptions about our students out there. There are common challenges that they face. And that's also important information to make sure we're including in our trainings, because not everyone is aware of that, both the needs of our students and not. So we did add a Jamboard link here to start having that conversation. So that is going to be open for you as we go through the trainings, for you all just to throw in some common challenges that you see in here, common misconceptions that people have about the student populations. And we hope that by all of us sharing, we'll have a collective kind of list and thing to share out as we build something that's maybe a more national training.
And I'm loving what I'm seeing in the chat about community college transfer. And if you're at community college, please join the conversation on this, because I couldn't find any transfer advocate trainings or trainings for staff and faculty on transfer at the community college level. I'm sure they're out there. We just weren't able to talk to anybody about them. So you have to talk about those relationships and the collaborations that can happen. And we're going to get to collaborations in a minute. So feel free to be on that Jamboard, write down some assumptions you've heard about transfer student experience, or that some of your faculty and staff at your school might have, or you might have yourself. We all make assumptions. So Resources is the next thing that we saw. There has to be some sort of a map of resources. It's important to always include resources that exist currently to support transfers, because not just for the staff and advocates to share with students, but often people don't know the people, places, and spaces that are relevant to the transfer community on a college campus. So how can an advocate help navigate these resources? Is there a resource map? Is there a breakdown for students, like some of these schools that we have here on the slide, who've created transfer resource maps or transfer resource toolkits and technology? Again, I know that we're running through this very fast, and this is probably stuff you've already considered or worked on. It's certainly you've heard about it in the last 2 days of the conference, but if you want to develop these tools further and talk about them with your teams, we have a bunch of worksheets and a bunch of guiding questions in the resource toolkit for you all to dive into when you get to back home and take this back to your teams. But what we really want to do is move beyond educating to activating transfer change agents.
Cool. And as Heather said, this was an area where as we were going through these trainings, we didn't see as much on. A lot of it was creating awareness and talking about what is, but not necessarily shifting the culture or changing what is to what could be. And I think that's an important part of the training that we want to make sure starts getting included as we're building things out. So we're going to talk quickly through some of these sections to really think about, like, how do we move to that next level? How do we turn that dial so that we can kind of create more active change agents across campus and continue to advocate for success for students in different frameworks and areas, and that it's not just siloed to those who are doing transfer work. So we really wanted to start with terminology, that there's a lot of terminology out there of how we identify students, how we talk about students, what we call students in different categories and populations. And we thought it was really important for that information to either be known, be centralized, and be agreed upon as you're building out, because they're just terminology that's thrown out there for students. We also thought it's important for that information to be ever changing, because as student populations change, our information should be changing with them, and we should be updating what we're calling students, how we're talking about them, how we're identifying them, as well as the language that we're using around it. Second part of that was really thinking about how we also talk about the language that we're using in context of the student experience. So one example that we really threw out there is one that we see a lot, which is class year or class of, and how that can be exclusive sometimes to the transfer student population when it's kind of front and center to the university, and they kind of grab onto this class year status as part of that. So what can we really do to change that?
The other big area that's really aligned with terminology is communication. We can't play this quote, which is such a shame because we had students read their quotes. It was really beautiful. We were hoping there was going to be an audio part to this. But this person really had a negative experience with an academic advisor and made them feel like they were in imposition. And this is just, to me, this is kind of a callback to Francesca Carpenter's, stop the negative experiences for your students. You have an amazing opportunity to do, as she mentioned, the human basic needs in life: be seen, be heard, be affirmed. And then also to our keynote, Estella mentioned evaluate your materials. What are the messages that you're sending to students in your communications, both one-on-one and as an institution? How are you being relentlessly welcoming? Thank you, Peter Felton, for that term, and encouraging of transfers in the classroom, on your websites, and before students even step on your campus. And for our community college partners, same goes for you. Like, how are you outreaching to them? How are you talking about transfer? One great example, and I really hope this video does play because it would be really cool to see. This was created for students, by students for students. It was actually written by a transfer student named Dion. It was a welcome video that was shared by the institution. So this wasn't just the transfer center doing it, the transfer folks on campus. It was the institution sending this message.
A little psycho.
Pain is temporary, pride is forever. A clever phrase explaining my endeavors at UCLA. The treasures found in sacrifice, through trial and error you'll gain advice. As a transfer, I realized that failure is a compromise. The price of pride will never die. So stroll through Bruins Walk, see the franchise, flock through crosswalks with wise allies, hit the ground running, master Jan steps, past Royce Hall, feel the good effects. I love UCLA. John Wooden, public affairs, North and South campus, apartments and dorms, relationships and heartbreaks, late nights at the study, long conversations, no sleep at Holly. As a transfer, time's limited, but the quality is there. It's not about the when, but the where. UCLA, see with your eyes, don't glare. Your perspective is needed, no need to fear. We are optimists. Welcome.
Right, I know. Thank you, y'all, for that. Yes, it gives me chills every single time. That's messaging to transfer students. That's that sense of belonging. You belong here. We are excited that you're coming to this university. This is your university, own it. So thinking about this and getting students involved in the
Pain
messaging.
is temporary.
Thank you,
Pride
Nancy, for being the transfer MVP. But this really leads into our next topic, which is representation.
Yay, me today.
I don't have a specific
so we really wanted to
office
talk about
or department
representation,
that
and we
made me
wanted to
feel
start
I
with these
didn't
few
belong
quotes.
exactly, but I would definitely say that the hiring committees for student jobs could improve for transfers. At times when looking for a job opportunity on campus, it seemed like there was a preference for students who had already been on campus for a year or two, or were going to be there a year or two longer than me as a transfer. And I think that is not fair because by the time I have a year or two at the institution, I would already be graduating. I think that the transfer students need to be valued for their knowledge and previous experience.
Unfortunately, I can't hear the audio on my end since I'm playing it, so I'm testing you all in your reactions. But really, the representation was something that we really wanted to get to because we feel like it's an important area to really focus on for our students. How are they showing up in the spaces that are being provided to students for leadership opportunities, networking, community building, and so forth? And we really kind of tried to do a deep dive of this and really ask our students how they feel about it. And there was so much feedback about like requirements for jobs or years of experience or term limits that were creating barriers for them to be able to access these resources and be the student leaders that they really wanted to be. So representation is really important, and it really starts with us evaluating our processes, evaluating our systems, and evaluating the things that the spaces that we sit in that we could do more advocacy for our students. I can give the example for myself as formerly working at UCLA in residential life, being a strong advocate to make sure that we had resident assistants who were reflected in the buildings for transfer students, not just in the transfer living learning community, but in all of our buildings, because transfers live in all of our buildings and shouldn't just be centered to the one building that is dedicated to transfers. It was also going a step beyond that and making sure that those students are supported in their experiences and creating and petitioning for an internship position for students who were transfers to support students in that development, since there was such a large number of them living on campus.
Which leads us to collaboration. And what I really want to say about this is we're all very collaborative, hopefully. Hopefully you're talking to other people on campus and other people are reaching out to you. And thinking about collaboration in terms of those in the room that you're training and working with, and encouraging them to reach out and collaborate with transfer students, with departments they haven't collaborated with before. But I kind of want to push beyond the norm, right? What are the next generation partnerships that you're doing? What's beyond the obvious? Who are you not reaching out to as a transfer center? If you're a 4-year transfer center, are you talking to the 2-year transfer center? You know, what are you talking to another school? Are you doing transfer pre-law workshops with the law school, the local law school? Like, where can you actually expand this advocacy network? So we have a ton of, and then there's some examples here that we show on the slides, and you'll have access. All of this is in the toolkit. So luckily, and the links for all of our videos will be in there as well. There's so much homework and so many takeaways, but we really just want to get to bold actions. How are others stepping into action? How are we helping folks on our campuses step into action? So let's really get to the nitty-gritty of the action work. This is the fun part. This is moving beyond the understanding into the action. I think I might skip this quote, but we again had these great quotes about students talking about how they really appreciated when staff and faculty were reaching out to them, when they were had programs that were specific to them, and when staff and faculty were speaking to them and collaborating with them. So we're challenging you all today and your training participants, once you make your training, to think about the bold actions that you're going to take and the info that you want to have as a transfer advocate in the world. So there's a homework sheet that you can start now. You can start looking at the next slide. Yeah, looking at the bold actions. This is just a brainstorm. You are the innovators. You are going to think of the creative things in the moment, and you know your university's best and what is needed.
All right. So we're just going to quickly recap everything that we just talked about, because we know it was a lot and we know we went through it pretty quickly, but we do want to really get to the work of the work. So we just talked about data collection, student experiences, getting resources, defining terminology and communication efforts, making sure student representation is present and accounted for, that there are bold goal settings for students, and that we're also celebrating all of our wins as we go along. So keep those things in mind as you're moving forward. We're going to move into an activity, and we really want you to focus on not just like, how do you do this big thing, but like, what is something that you can kind of focus on now and workshop through over the next few minutes. So Heather is going to give us our intro to that.
Thank you,
and then the
TaMisha.
homework is in the folder as well. If you need to reference it, keep in mind these are guides to help you build, help your team build, help your university build, or just for you to self-reflect as you see fit.
So in a moment, you're going to be put into breakout rooms with 4 or 5 other people. And again, just repeating what TaMisha just said, pick one, share out really briefly from the beginning, from your reflection on the TAF, the Transfer Advocacy Framework. Pick one area of focus and just build on it with a group. Use your resources in the Transfer Think Tank to talk about what is possible in that area. There are guiding questions on the breakout sheet, but don't feel like you have to follow all the questions. It's way too much. Pick one. Pick one to flesh out as a group, and know that you have it all here at your fingertips for when you want to work on it in your individual teams at home. Okay, great. So I'm going to post a bunch of links. Thank you, everybody. I hope you had some time to just connect on one issue, even just as we were seeing people come in and out of the main room, we were really learning a lot about what's resonating and what's sticking. It sounds like some of these messages are really coming through the whole week, right? Of how to look at your terminology, how to look at your communication, how to look at your collaboration and your relationships, and how to work with students and tell the student story. So TaMisha, do you want to share the kudos board? I would love to see how everybody shared out their stuff. So did anybody add to the Transfer Agents Unite kudos board about what they talked about? Oh, got a couple of things. I love it. Community connecting conversation. Well, you can have that link there. And if you want to add a GIF, an image, a text about what you talked about, or what you would like to focus on for your advocacy item this year, put it on that board. Perfect. Thank you, TaMisha. So we also have a connector. The next link in the chat is a Transfer Nation Connect sign up form. So as we said in the beginning, this is really a collaboration. This is a collection. You all are doing the work on your campuses. And so we would like to connect, and we'd like to keep this work going. And keep the conversation going. So there's a QR code or a link there to sign up. And obviously Emily NIST will be contacting y'all as well. And I just wanted to give a huge thank you to all of our partner schools. There are so many that I couldn't list, but significantly we interviewed UNC Wilmington, UCSD, App State, the University of Minnesota, and of course UCLA, but so many more. Central Washington University, there's just so many people who have added to this pool of knowledge. So just thank you so much for that. You'll see all of our references and their contact information in the references sheet and the resources sheet that are here in the chat. Oh, So we probably don't have a lot of time for feedback and questions, but we really did want to hear from you what's missing. What elements are missing from this material? This will probably be our conversation next time that we get together, since we don't have a lot of time now. And then as a call back to what we talked about in the beginning, Transfer Nation is a place to continue the conversation if you're interested. We're on every social media. We just started on TikTok this week, so I will put all of those links in the chat as well. And we're having a happy hour tonight. You're welcome to join us at that if you want to continue the conversation.
And I think we're going to just end with like, thank you all for being here. We're going to go back to the questions and opening it. I just wanted to make sure we got the where you can go to continue the conversation out beforehand so that we can kind of talk and just hear you all. Because like Heather said, this is something that we are growing and we're still building it. So we do want to feel like feedback about where else could we go? What else that needs to be included? But we also wanted to make sure you get to celebrate a little bit of yourself for like going through the training with us and getting these resources and feeling empowered to be an advocate for yourself and your university as you move forward. So I'll go back to feedback and questions. And yeah, let's open it up and see, are there things that are missing? Are there things that you would like to learn more about? Are there comments that you just have? Feel free to drop them in the chat.
Do a chatty chat in the box. But
Holly Herrera will always talk. Always.
Oh, Holly, welcome.
Of course. Hello, everyone. So much information that I'm not even sure I can even process half of what y'all shared today. I'm going to take it back and then dissect and pull apart and figure out. It's so hard for me to realize I could be on multiple, or my institution and me as a human, can be on multiple parts within the framework and working toward the advanced on one and still be in the beginner stages of the other, and realizing that's okay. And that I know what I need to do to be able to advance to the advanced. I got all the words. Yeah, so I appreciate all of this information and the Dropbox. That's outstanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. Yes, and we agree. We definitely created a 3-day workshop here, not a 75-minute workshop. But hopefully you can take this information back, as Holly said, and explore it and continue to give feedback on it and continue to develop it. I'm going to put the Dropbox link in the chat again, just in case people didn't get it. Anyone else want to share out? Did anybody actually? Yeah, go for it, Eric.
I'll just jump in really quick because I know we have like 30 seconds left. But one thing that I've gotten out of this whole conference, and especially out of this experience, is there isn't a central website at my school for transfer students. And over the years, I've been gathering all kinds of advice and resources, and been, especially over the last few months, bringing stuff together for non-traditional students just because I saw a need. And I've decided I'm going to create my own probably Google website that I will have complete editorial control over. We were talking in our group about what is the phrase? I forgot it already. Take action and ask for forgiveness later, or whatever that saying is. And I'm just going to bring this all together in my own resource, and hope that other other parts of the campus will chime in at some point, and then I can continue to build it out. It's just one way that I think I can start doing something now rather than waiting for other things to kind of catch up.
I love that, Eric. And Emily put a link in the chat, and it's also in the toolkit that you have, the Dropbox. There's a website guide that NIST did, a strategy guide to building a great transfer website. So if you haven't already seen that, check it out. Thank you, everybody. I know folks are getting on with their day, but we really appreciate you bearing with all of our technical issues. And as we sped through, hopefully things resonated and stood out to you. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions, because we want to keep collecting feedback.